Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Chat. It's me, George Cummings, and today is probably going to be quite a bit of a short one, I'm afraid. I don't wish to get into the details, obviously, but a lot of the stuff that has gone on that's been especially exciting for the last 7 days has very much been stuff in my personal life, very much been stuff that I'm not willing to share on the internet, and I hope you'll forgive me for that, but it does mean that there will not be much ground covered today. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to especially strongly consider any big ideas that I wanted to share or any specific opinions that were on my mind. So really, today's episode will just be focusing on one thing, and it will be how I felt about a Cambridge residential I went on. Now, last Sunday and Monday, I went to Cambridge. Well, I went on the Sunday, I came back on the Monday. I went to Cambridge as a successful member of what was known as the Pelican program, which is an extracurricular program done by Corpus Christi College, Cambridge, where a small group of people are picked for each subject. In my case, it was philosophy. And they do bi-weekly online sessions where they are supposed to have read pre-reading, which, I mean, I can discuss some of the things that I've had to read for Pelican if you want, let me know in comments. But basically we have 2 weeks to read some sort of academic article, and then we have to discuss it for an hour on like an online Zoom thing. Now, I've been doing this for about 6 months, and it is mainly, I mean, there's going to be one sort of wrap-up session sooner rather than later yet to be scheduled, but it has mainly come to an end with this residential. And it was a 2-day stay overnight trip at Corpus Christi College, where we got shown what it would be like to be a Cambridge student. And so I'm going to explain that, and I'm going to explain why I have decided that I'm not going for Oxbridge. I feel like I may have mentioned this in another video. Honestly, can't be bothered to go back and check. But I will talk specifically about how I found Cambridge and why I know for a fact I'm not going. So that would be the main topics for today. Let's jump right in. Okay, so I arrived at Cambridge at around about 2 o'clock on the Sunday. By the way, let the record state, I am recording this on the 11th of July, so the Friday before it comes out. And when I'm saying the Sunday, I mean the previous Sunday to the one where this comes out. So yeah, that was the situation there. I arrived on the Sunday afternoon. It was actually quite a nice time. We first started off with a tour, after a brief talk about what it's like to study at Cambridge and why we were all really cool for being in Pelican. But we had a tour, which wasn't especially long. It went all around Cambridge, and then we had... I'm trying to remember what came first. Yeah, we had a tour, and then we checked into rooms. Rooms were rather lovely. I'm realising as I'm saying this sounds really rambly. Honestly, Corpus Christi is not a very big college. It's not like a tiny college, I'm pretty sure. I've not been to many Cambridge colleges. I think it's my only one, actually. But if anyone's looking at a smaller college, I'd recommend Corpus Christi. It's not that big. And ultimately that makes it a lot more manageable, and I think that also makes it more easy to get in, or so I was told. So that's what I have to say about the tour itself. And actually, while I'm on the topic of it, they have at Corpus Christi a wonderful chapel that I managed to use both days. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this on the channel before. I'm a practicing Christian. I actually think I mentioned it in the very first episode. And I must say, I found it really rather lovely to be able to go in the chapel just a couple of times while I was on the trip and have quite a fresh, new prayer environment, but also just like a very well and nice like as a chapel it is just beautiful. It's got a lovely looking organ, which unfortunately I couldn't hear, but I'm told that on Evensong they use the chapel for a service, which is always rather lovely. So that bit about the college is good. The rest of it it's. I don't want to make it sound critical, but nothing really sticks out. It's just a nice college. It's quite nicely done, and that's really that. And I've not got anything else to say, so I'm going to move on to probably. Oh well, actually no. I may as well talk about rooms while I talk about the colleges. We had single rooms, individual rooms. There was one lucky bastard on my floor, in my building. Now, God knows how I got in because I don't consider myself one of these at all. But Pelican is supposed to be for disadvantaged students as like an outreach thing. I don't. I mean, possibly it's just the fact that I go to a state school, but everyone there, like everyone has to go to a state school. But other than that, it's for disadvantaged students. And so the large majority of the students that were there on the trip, on the residential, were women. And so the lads, the gents, all were on the same, like, area. They're all in the same small building. One lucky bugger in our building got, like, a 3-room suite to himself. It was ridiculous. But, yes, the rest of us just had, the rest of us common folk just had, single bedroom, rather nice, honestly, apartments. They weren't, they were sort of like what you'd expect to see at a hotel. I found it quite nice. I didn't spend much time in there other than sleeping, which I also didn't spend much time doing. But I suppose we can get onto that in a bit. So yeah, I think the most time I spent in there was probably when I played cards with one of the lads during check-in. But other than that, in like a small group of 4. But other than that, I didn't spend much time in the room. I know this isn't very helpful. I would honestly recommend, if you want to look at Corpus Christi College, you go and you do a tour yourself. Because other than the chapel, which, I'm a sucker for chapels generally, I haven't got much to comment on it. So that's really that for what the actual building was like. However, after check-in, which was, just to clarify, after tours, we had our first of 2 academic sessions. Now, unlike the ones we did online, these were, rather than being an hour, they were an hour and a half. And the first one that we did was on the philosophy of time, which was really rather interesting. And in that time, I'd managed to make a friend who wasn't in my group in the original online sessions. And we sort of bonded a little bit over both not understanding someone else's argument at all, which was rather funny because this person was making this weird comparison of time to a river and the metaphor. It's a see, I say that, and that's a pretty intuitive metaphor, but the way she was using it wasn't really making much sense. And me and this person kept shooting looks at each other, and that was quite fun because we were like, what on earth is going on? But overall, it was a very nice session. The metaphysics of time, I discovered, is quite an interesting topic, and if anyone wants me to talk more about what we discussed in that session, I'd be more than happy to. But excuse me, pardon me, my manners. But we've got such limited time. I'm looking at the clock now. It's already 9 minutes in. I don't want to discuss that too much. So, after that, there was a formal dinner. And now this was the first and probably only Oxbridge formal dinner I have or will go to. And it was rather nice. One of my friends went to the second session or the second residential because he was on a different subject to me. And he was telling me today that he found the food a little bit highbrow, but I found it rather enjoyable. But more importantly, we were given very interesting gifts. Instead of being given certificates to celebrate our work on the Pelican program, we were given books. I was given Mortal Questions by Thomas Nagel, which is a philosophy book, mainly about ethics. And we have little certificates on the inside. But what was really interesting is that the books were all personalised. See, I had mentioned Nagel a couple of times because I know a little bit of his work, not all of it, mind, nowhere near all of it, but I know a little bit of his work, and I'd mentioned in a session, because one of his articles came up as something we had to read, and I mentioned when we were told that I'd read part of his work before, and I said that I rather enjoyed it, even if I didn't, even if I don't agree with Nagel on everything. I rather enjoyed his concept, and I rather enjoyed using it because I use it for an essay competition. And so I was given that book. I was given this book, forgive me, Thomas Nagel's Mortal Questions. I'm yet to read it. And to be honest with you, and I can go into this another time if you want, leave a comment, you know the drill. I'm a rather slow reader, so I don't know if I'll get into it for a fair while. But still, it was a really nice gesture. It was much better than just a certificate, and we were given them at dinner, just to clarify. And yeah, that was just rather nice. If you excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick pause to have a drink. And then after that, after the dinner, we were more or less just given free rein. And so I mainly spent it just chilling out in other people's rooms and arguing about philosophy. And this brings me on to the thing that I love the most about the Cambridge residential, and it's that most of the people that I was with were other philosophy students. And if they weren't philosophy students, then I think the majority of other people I spoke to were classic students, who are also, I've found, at least from my experience at this residential, I mean, also I'm a classic student at A-level, but I mean they were Pelican classic students and I was a philosophy classic student. Sorry, they studied classics with Pelican, I studied philosophy with Pelican, is what I'm trying to say. Forgive me, it's been a rather long day and I'm slightly tipsy actually. But, yes, it meant that a lot of them were very prone to arguing, and so, or just discussing these sorts of matters. And so first of all, I spent probably an hour, maybe a couple, in the room of the girl who I had sort of like met in the previous academic session, and we seemed to agree that this other person's ideas made no sense. And so we met, we discussed that for a bit, we discussed some other things for a bit. Apparently her parents are barristers, which is rather interesting. I probably need to speak to her because that's something that I'm considering for myself, being a barrister, and if I haven't mentioned that, leave a comment and I'll discuss it more. But that was rather fun, although there was a rather silly rumour that spread that I was in some way getting involved with her, which was rather awkward, but that didn't last, I hope. But yeah, we discussed time a bit and just all sorts of hullabaloo, and it was just that was more of the casual social side of things. And then later on in the evening, I had a very wonderful discussion with a few gentlemen who were also on the philosophy stream, like the philosophy course, and we had a wonderful discussion about the authenticity of the Bible, and basically the idea of whether or not the Bible actually does come from God, and how we can trust it, and that sort of thing. And that continued rather late into the evening. I mean, I was getting back to my room at probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock from the previous person's room, but that conversation continued until about 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning. So that was rather interesting, and I probably won't go into all of them now, but the thing that was the most wonderful about the Pelican residential was just how willing the other people were to debate. I mean, look, the one thing that I've been slightly disappointed about with this channel is how little people have been asking me questions about my views in the comments. And the reason why is because I really do like discussing philosophy, I really do like discussing politics. And that is why it was so fulfilling to me that all these people that went to Cambridge were so willing to discuss these concepts and to discuss these ideas. it was quite, you know, almost liberating in a way, because there were these people that were very interested in the subject matter and also weren't particularly put off by the way I debate, because sometimes I go in strong. I try not to. Sometimes I do a little bit, but generally I hold back. I think people are generally quite scared of debate, and that can be a topic for another time. But these people weren't, and it was really refreshing because it got me to sort of seriously have that one-on-one with them in a way that was ultimately quite productive for our mutual understanding, which was just beautiful. I mean, that's what I want to do when I go to university. So it was really good to get that. Really good to get that. But yes, that's sort of how that first day went. Now, the second day was very much more of the same in the fact that I woke up, went down for breakfast, and one of the first things I do after spending some time in the chapel and also handing in my keys because we only stay for one night is over breakfast debating the qualities of God with one of the philosophy students who I was arguing with the night prior. So, you know, tenacious buggers they are, and I mean that with absolute love for them in my heart. But yes, that was a rather interesting breakfast conversation. Trying to think what happened after that. Oh, I'm pretty certain. Oh, there were a couple of personal statement workshops and things, but I'm going to skip over those because they're not interesting. So there was some stuff about that, and then I had lunch, and then we went punting. We did not, which is okay. So I don't know who has seen in Venice. There's the people who sort of paddle the boat, and I'm pretty sure they push it along, but I might be wrong. But punting is this thing you do where you have a boat on a canal, and you have essentially just a really long stick, and you push the boat along like this, like it's an oar, but you're not pushing the water. You're sort of pushing against the ground because the canal is just shallow enough for it. And so we were punted basically up and down a fair bit of the canal in Cambridge, and we got a really lovely tour of the rest of the colleges, which was rather nice. At that point, I was nattering away to some Pelican Classic students, and we had some quite interesting conversations about what it's like to study A-level classics, what it's like to study other subjects. I met a girl who studies A-level Latin at a state school. Now, let me know if you've ever heard of this, anyone. But at a private school, yes, I'd see it. And I mean, that's rich coming from me, Mr. A-level RS in classics. But Latin at a state school felt very unusual to me, so let me know if you heard of that. But yeah, I spoke to some people about that sort of thing. There was another girl there who I forgot the name of. I'm terrible with names. I don't know if I've mentioned this on camera before, but I am shocking with names. There's a few that I remember. I'm not going to say them because I don't want to dox these people. But I can only remember about 4 out of the 8 people that I spoke to, which is really unfortunate and a me problem. I exchanged contacts with quite a few people, but some of them haven't got back to me yet. So that's fine. But I had another discussion with this girl about again, a lot of it was about God. A lot of people sort of independently approached me about the sort of metaphysics of God stuff, and I think that is more likely to happen probably when you're a Christian, because it gives you quite a unique philosophical viewpoint. But at the same time, I think it may also just be that I've accidentally steered the conversation that way, because sort of the metaphysics of God is currently the area that I'm finding the most interesting. And if you're interested in why I'm interested in that, again, leave me a comment, please. I'm begging for these things, bro. I need retention boosters. I need people to click on the. I don't need people to click on these. That's a lie. I would actually rather I don't get too popular, but you know, I'd like engagement. Anyway, so that was nice. There was also actually I'm going to take a drink break. 2 seconds. There was also and this is probably the last thing I'll go into detail about, because the rest of it's sort of personal statements and interviews and other uninteresting stuff. If you want to know about like the process of getting into Oxbridge, do let me know, because I feel like I have a little bit of insight into that now, but other than that, I'm just going to focus on the things that I found interesting. The thing that we ended off with is another academic session, and this time it was on the metaphysics of colour. So it's all about what we actually consider the colour to be, whether it's just the thing, like whether it's just the property on like an object, or whether we consider colour to actually be like the sensation of experiencing that object, the qualia, if you're familiar with the term. And so that was a nice way to end it off. Actually, that's something that I'd briefly mentioned in that first essay, again, the one that I brought Nagel into. So, funnily enough, a lot of stuff was sort of linked back to that very first essay I did, and if you ever want me to talk about that, I'd be more than happy to. Actually, you know what? I know how I'm going to end this video, and it's purely because everything that seems to have happened on Monday and Sunday in terms of the academic stuff seems to have linked back to the first essay that I did for a competition. So that's really all there is to talk about. There was the academic session on colour. That's really that. The main summary, the thing that I really like the most about Cambridge, and that's why I want this channel to be as well, is that people were willing to approach me, and people were willing to debate, and people were willing to stray off into different subject matters and talk about whatever, and just have nice conversations about humanities subjects and academic stuff. In the spirit of that, I would like to, instead of you guys, I would just like you guys to ask questions to me, but I would like to ask questions to you, right? I don't know if anyone has seen I, Robot featuring Will Smith. Great film. I rather like it. I'm not a sci-fi guy, but the two sci-fi films that I really like are I, Robot and Minority Report. And Minority Report I could go on about for a fair bit because I really love that film, actually. It's actually another very philosophical one. It's about fate and free will. I'd highly recommend, but let me know in comments if you want me to talk about it. But I would like to ask you all now, because it's the first essay competition that I ever entered. Do you think, and this is fully you, I prefer a reason, obviously, but if you're just happy to say yes or no, let me know. And also, if you guys want to go back and forth with each other in the comments, I'd love that as well. Not just because it boosts retention, but because I'd actually quite like to see a mini debate about how this works go on in my comment section. It'll be rather amusing. Do you think that machines, robots, or any other synthetically created being is created like by us out of material as opposed to biologically born? I mean, that's quite a stretch. Let's just say machines. Although you can stretch it to like, can we create consciousness in general? The question formally though is, do you think machines can ever be conscious? And if so, to what extent? Now that is the question that I'm posing to you guys. Obviously, if you really don't want to talk in the comments, I'd still be interested to hear your opinion. So if you know who I am in real life, message me. But that is the very rambly synopsis of my experience at Pelican, and that is the question that I would like to pose to you all, because I want to get you people thinking philosophically. And I will, you know what, we can almost do this as sort of like reverse Q&A. If you write your reasoning for why you do or don't think we can make machines conscious, if I get enough responses, I won't do it if there's one or two, but if I get a fair few responses, I will address my favourite argument in the next video. That can be the little challenge for you all. I will address the best argument in the next video. Anyway, I know this has been rambly. I didn't really get any comments last video except for like one person who said you should keep it rambly. So I will, and I hope I've succeeded in that, Reese. But yes, that is the end of this video. It may be a bit all over the place, but that's what I was doing on Sunday and Monday. I apologise I don't have any big ideas to share today. and I apologise that I didn't really have much to talk about in my personal life. But ultimately, it's because a lot has happened that I just don't want to discuss on YouTube. So, yes, that's really the situation where we're at. This is sort of like a filler thing. I mean, maybe I would have done something really interesting tomorrow, and I should have recorded this tomorrow, because again, I'm recording these on Friday. But I doubt it, because I've got plans for tomorrow, and they're not interesting. So, as you guys are seeing this on Sunday, I hope you all have had a wonderful evening. I hope you've enjoyed my little crackpot, sort of all over the place, slightly bedlam-esque description of how my couple of days were. And I hope that some of you will, even if you don't respond to like the machines and emotions things, just any sort of question along those lines that you want to drop by in the comments, please, because I would genuinely, I want this to be a conversational thing. And I said in the very first episode, I feel like the only way this would go wrong is if people didn't leave comments. And unfortunately that's what seems to be happening. Now partially that's on me, because I haven't been throwing many ideas out there. But here's my first one, well not my first one, but here's the one I'm throwing out there. Do you think machines can have emotions? Let me know, explain why. But also, you know, I think it's partially, honestly, up to you guys. You're not obligated, but ultimately, if you want this to continue, it would be in your best interest to throw any theories for anything about like morality or metaphysics or politics, any theories that you have, throwing them at me will be a good way to keep this show on the road. So, on that note, thank you very much everyone for listening. I hope you all I hope you'll all subscribe, I hope you'll leave a comment. Remember that by the end of August, the start of February, which for me, basically, that's sort of the rough deadline, it's supposed to be when I get back to school, but let's just say by the end of August I'm trying to get 50 subscribers, so spread the word. But on that note, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I apologise because I said this one would be short and it hasn't been. And yeah, God bless and bye bye.